Hey guys, generic Jujutsu Kaisen YouTuber here, and today we have a like goal of 500 likes. If this video can hit 500 likes, I'll be able to continue to bless your feeds with good, amazing Jujutsu Kaisen content. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and like this video. I'll give you some time. I know it's a pretty rough decision to, go down and click a button on your local browser, but can you also hit that subscribe button for more content? Only if you're not already subscribed though, of course. Anyway, the world of Jujutsu Kaisen is changing. Whether that's happening for better or for worse, I'll just leave that for you to decide. But how exactly is this change within the Jujutsu Kaisen world going to happen? This change is an attempt to revive the golden age of cursed techniques, which is the Heian Era. Or should I say, was the Heian Era due to it being a part of Japanese history. This time period would be the last of its kind, as it would feature more of the classical roots of Japanese history. This would be mildly apparent due to the Chinese influences falling in a decline, which would allow the natural culture of Japan to suddenly mature. The Heian Era would be a high point in Japanese culture that later generations would come to admire. The Heian Era would also be remembered for giving rise to the samurai class, which would eventually take power and start the feudal period of Japan. Now, what makes the Heian Era so important in Jujutsu Kaisen? Well, as mentioned before, the Heian Era would be known as the golden age of cursed techniques. Essentially, during this time period, that would mean that the cursed techniques would be in their prime. They would be at their strongest. Meaning that the world was more focused on Jujutsu in the past. The world would revolve around defeating curses, enhancing and creating more techniques. Even so, with the conditions of the world, these shamans would not make these techniques because they wanted to. They'd make these techniques because they had to. And this was all thanks to the world that they lived in. The time period that they lived in. Ashiya Sadatsuna developed the simple territory in the Heian Era, specifically for self-defense. So this gives you a sort of idea of how savage people were in this time period due to not having society or any true rule of law. During the Heian Era, if you were the strongest with Jujutsu, no one would be able to question you. If the world is primarily focused on Jujutsu and you are the best at Jujutsu, that would essentially make you a king. And when taking into consideration that most of the curse techniques are developed from curses themselves, and also be inherited through family bloodlines, we would see a world where both shamans and curses existed at a single point in time. And by reviving this specific time period, this would allow the curses of the Heian Era to come back to the modern age and thrive as they used to in the past. Some of the most powerful and evil curses will come back again, or in other words, yokai. With the revival of the Heian Era, it isn't too far-fetched to see an oni, an ogre, or a demon. Oni are born when truly wicked humans die and end up in one of the many Buddhist hells. Transformed into oni, they become the ogreish and brutal servants of Great Lord Enma, the ruler of hell. Wielding great iron clubs, they crush and destroy humans solely for enjoyment. An Oni's job is to mete out horrible punishments such as peeling off skin, crushing bones, and rendering other torments too horrible to describe. All of these tortures are for wicked sinners, but only those not quite wicked enough to be reborn as Oni themselves. Occasionally, when a human is so utterly wicked that his soul is beyond any redemption, he transforms into an Oni while still alive. He then remains on Earth to terrorize the living. These transformed Oni are the ones most legends tell about, and the ones who pose the most danger to humankind. This sounds pretty similar to a curse. Likewise, another common yokai that appeared in the Heian era would be a kitsune. Most tales of kitsune are about wild foxes punishing wicked priests, greedy merchants, and boastful drunkards. They vex targets by creating phantom sounds and sights. Stealing from them or otherwise humiliating them publicly, certain mental disorders have been attributed to possession by kitsune. Mysterious illusory fires and strange lights in the sky are said to be caused by their magic, and are known as kitsunebi, or foxfire. Kitsune are extremely intelligent and powerful shapeshifters. They frequently harass humans by transforming into giants or other fearsome monsters. Sometimes they do this just for pranks, and sometimes for nefarious purposes. And these two are just some of the many yokai, or in other terms, curses that we could potentially see in the future of Jujutsu Kaisen. All thanks to the world leaning more towards Jujutsu, which would leave anyone who does not know Jujutsu right now in the dust. Basically, humanity as a whole would become extinct in order to create the world and build it entirely on Jujutsu and sorcery. So if you don't know Jujutsu, you're better off dead, and if you do know Jujutsu, you might as well just get picked off by a curse or an evil shaman. This would essentially turn the entire world into a giant battleground, where everyone and everything would be fighting just to simply survive. This is where the term Jujutsu Kaisen would most likely take its form in the story, with Jujutsu Kaisen meaning sorcery fight and the actual world itself becoming a never-ending battleground. Then the Jujutsu Kaisen itself would take place once the world revolves around Jujutsu. And from here on out, we may witness the reconstruction of the world and possibly the redevelopment of society as a whole. And with history repeating itself, we could see the return of the three great Japanese vengeful spirits. With Yuta Okkotsu obviously being the next Michizane, he would be the substitute for Sugawara no Michizane in this new Heian era. The other two vengeful spirits are definitely up for more interpretation, since we have not seen anyone that can carry out their bloodlines yet. But with the world turning over on itself, hell might just break loose, and everything might actually be worse than it already was.